This is Still a Part of Us, a podcast where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter Red, and in this episode of Advice and Encouragement from a Lost Mom, I chat with Lili, whose daughter, Leia, was stillborn at 32 weeks due to an umbilical cord accident. By the way, you can hear Lili's episode about the birth of her child on episode 50. Today we discuss with Lili what she's created physically to remember her daughter, Leia, and how she's navigated her subsequent pregnancy and birth of her son after the loss of her daughter. As a word of caution to our listeners, this discussion contains emotional triggers with stillbirth and infant loss. Please keep yourself emotionally and mentally healthy and seek help if needed. Hope this helps someone out there today.
Lili, thank you so much again for coming on the podcast this week. And we have been blessed to hear that beautiful story about Leia and so excited to continue talking about her and your experience. So welcome again. Thank you again.
And thank you again.
Well, so let's just back up a little bit so that we have a little bit of context for our listeners. How long ago was Leia born? At the time of this recording, of course. So
yeah, at the time of this recording, about 11 months ago. It'll be 1 year on June 6th.
Okay, it's been fairly recent then. Mm-hmm. And I also want to point out that you actually have another child already. And
yes.
We'll get into that in a little bit. So tell me what it's been like the last 11 months for you. After how has that process looked for you and how you've grieved and mourned?
Wow, it's been a roller coaster. Because, after she was born, they said, or so many different people told me different time frames to wait to have another baby. I was on fire to have another baby. I just felt I need to have a baby here to mother. Like it didn't feel natural to have, of course it's not natural at all,
right.
But
mm-hmm.
it was just so profoundly unnatural to have gone through that process, to come home, to be healing from childbirth, to be, suppressing my milk and not have a baby here.
Yeah.
Yes. It was too much for my brain. I'm a person who I have been told that I have kind of OCD tendencies, and it just didn't compute. I was just like, I have to do whatever I can to have a baby here, because this is not the way it's supposed to go. This is not the process.
No.
And so literally, I had one period, and it was just, that was all I could think about for weeks after she was born, was just get pregnant again as soon as possible.
Did your husband also kind of have a similar feeling?
Yeah, he, I think he was obviously we were both in shock, but I think that maybe now looking back on it, obviously I think both of us would we have made a different decision? I don't want to say that we would, because then I wouldn't have this baby that I have now.
Yeah.
But with what we went through with this pregnancy, it was rough. Making that decision to just kind of go against what other people had told us was safe, like my doctor and midwife and parents and friends, counselors saying, it's probably best to wait. We were just kind of, we had no interest in following anybody's orders or advice.
Yeah. And do you think that helped you process some of your grief?
I feel like it did, but then of course I don't really have anything to compare it to,
True.
Do I?
Yeah.
Obviously I found out that I was pregnant again by the time her due date rolled around, or shortly after her due date, which was August 1st. So, we're talking literally like about 8 to 9 weeks after she was born, I found out I was pregnant again. So as far as processing it, I'm not so sure it really helped. I think it probably has delayed a lot of my processing the grief, to be honest, because a lot of my feelings I had to kind of cut short at a certain point in time when things started to get really bad with this pregnancy. And I started to get to the point where it was like, okay, I need to focus on the least stress possible. I need to step away from all of these feelings for at least a short period of time until I have this baby, because I was just starting to worry that, the immense stress that I was going through with the grief was now causing these problems that I was having in my second pregnancy, which of course, like I told you before, with my first pregnancy with Leia, it was just all, dream come true. It was fine, no problems until there were problems, until she was gone. With my second pregnancy, it was just one problem after another.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's not, you're like, oh, thanks a lot.
No, I mean, thank goodness we have a living baby, to show for it. But at the same time, it was not the best thing as far as, my grief process went.
Yeah.
But I mean, I won't say that, when I did finally find out that I was pregnant again, and I say finally, I didn't have to wait very long.
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate in that. But when I found that out, I was able to breathe a sigh of relief. Because, with this OCD brain, it was just kind of like, okay, I'm pregnant again. There's a baby. There's supposed to be a baby. Now there's a baby.
Yeah.
Like I was able to kind of just move forward with normal functioning, I would say, when I became pregnant again. Like as far as work went, I remember my boss telling me, like literally the day I found out, I remember my boss saying to me, "You seem to be doing pretty well today, Lili."
Oh.
It brought me, I don't want to say it brought me out of the darkness, but it was a light. It was a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I was going to say you have a goal to get to. And wow, that's crazy. So you did have quite a few, it sounded like the pregnancy was rough, actually. Then.
Oh, yeah. From the very beginning, I was having, spotting and bleeding in the very first few weeks. I had a subchorionic hemorrhage at the beginning, which is just where the fetal sac, I guess, is starting to become slightly separated, so it causes some bleeding. It can cause miscarriage in a lot of women.
Yeah.
It did not reach that point for us, thank goodness. But then shortly after that, at 17 weeks, I went in because I had experienced kind of a difference in discharge. Sorry, is it okay to talk about medical things?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like
people
totally all right.
People know what they're getting into. We're talking about birth here, so yes.
Okay, good. So, I had just experienced like a change in discharge, and I was like, all right, maybe I need to be checked out, see what's going on.
Yeah.
And my maternal fetal medicine doctor told me to come in. He did an ultrasound. He was like, "You've got a really short cervix, and if you hadn't come in, then a week from now you would have shown up at the hospital with the urge to push."
Ooh.
And to be told that at 17 weeks.
And they didn't say anything about that either with Leia.
Nope. And it would have been something that is very common for women with a heart-shaped uterus to have some kind of preterm labor.
Okay.
But I didn't have any of that with her. I was having no premature labor or anything like that. I mean, like I said, it took 24 hours for her to come out, for the induction and everything. So, I mean, my cervix was long and thick throughout all of it with her. But at 17 weeks with him, it was very, very short. And according to my doctor, a week out from having to push.
Wow.
So, I started on some medication. Typically what is done in that case is they'll give you a cerclage right away if they see that it's that short, which a cerclage is just something that it's kind of like a rubber band that ties the two ends of the cervix together to keep the baby inside. And he didn't feel like it was necessary to do it right then. I had a couple more hospital scares before we got to 20 weeks when I was already dilated 2 centimeters.
Oh.
Yeah, I showed up at the hospital, worried again, contractions. This time they said, you're dilating and we need to get the cerclage done as soon as possible or you're going to lose this baby. And typically, you know, a cerclage isn't done that late in the game at 20 weeks. And so at 20 weeks, it's considered a rescue cerclage versus a preventative one, which is typically done between 12 and 14 weeks. Every single doctor who I talked to who was, you know, prepping me for this surgery said, it's very unlikely you're going to make it to term. It's very possible your water could break on the table. And to be told that just about 5 months after having given birth to my stillborn daughter, you know, I still don't know how I continued to function.
Yeah.
I was still working at this point, you know. I mean, I took a little bit of time off to have the surgery, to finally have the cerclage get put in. Of course, my water did not break on the table, and we went to 36 weeks with Indiana before I ended up having him. But I know it was completely against what everybody thought was going to happen.
Was that something in the back of your mind of like, this is going to go south? Because it just seems like all of these things would make me, like, this is going to go south again. This is going to go south again. This is going to,
Constantly. I mean, and it wasn't even just the fear of preterm labor. It was also, I was worried about another cord accident because this baby was more active than Leia.
Really?
Leia was super active. And I'm just thinking, this baby is more active. Am I going to have another cord accident? Do I just make bad cords that tangle babies, you know? There was that constant fear. This time I did kick counts 5 times a day. Yeah. I think I was doing kick counts 5 times every day.
And he was active the entire time.
The entire time. There was one time where he was a little bit less active. And I just remember thinking to myself, any less activity, I'm going in. I don't care.
Yeah.
You know, and I called my doctor and they said, come in for a non-stress test. We did that. He was okay. But, you know, there was nothing that was going to keep me from going to the hospital again, let's just say, because I will always wonder. I will always wonder what might have happened if I had gone to the hospital on June 4th, on that day when she was moving slightly less, when I have a headache and blurry vision, and I went to the midwife, you know, she just said, go home, you're fine, you just have a migraine. And the next day, Leia was gone.
Yeah.
You know, I will always wonder what might have been. And so with this pregnancy, and I know with any future pregnancies I have, it won't matter. If I just have, you know, even the tiniest inkling of, should I go in to the doctor? Should I go to the hospital?
You're going in.
If I think that, like my new rule is, if I think that means I should.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I'm asking myself that question, that means I should.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And so obviously these last few months have been, I'm assuming when Indy came, finally, that was, quite a shock. I'm not a shock, but like, wow, he came, he's here, he's alive, he is good. Did that bring up a lot of, baggage? I don't know what the best way it is, but,
so much baggage. You know, there was the baggage of, you know, right before he was born, of, you know, labor and everything. And just, I ended up, we chose to go to the same hospital that we had Leia in. And that was very triggering. I knew, of course, it was going to be triggering. I was prepared for it. But it was like stepping back in time. The same nurses were there. Same doctor was there. Nurse Jody, she was there. She ended up delivering him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was that good?
It was good.
Okay.
It was so good. I was so happy. I was so happy that, you know, the doctor who had delivered Leia, we came very close to having her deliver Indiana. I was so not wanting that to happen. And we missed that mark by about 15 minutes. She was going to come on shift next.
You're like, sorry, you got to stay here. You got to deliver this baby.
So we got the doctor who we really wanted. She ended up staying to deliver Indiana. But gosh, like there was a time when I was in labor with him, and we actually were able to have our doula present, even though technically that was not supposed to be allowed. They made an exception for us, honestly.
That's awesome. So I just want to kind of back up because you had Indy just in March.
Yeah, March 27th.
March 27th.
Not even 2 months ago.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really new for you, and also in the middle of a pandemic. And so the fact that they let you have a doula in there, that's great.
Yeah. She wasn't supposed to be allowed. Different people were telling us different things, absolutely not. You can only, it can only be you and your husband, but they did end up making an exception. I think probably because we donated a cuddle cot to them.
That helps.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember Nurse Jody saying, no, we love you. There's no way that you're not going to have your doula here. Yeah. We're going to make it happen.
Oh man, Nurse Jody rocks.
I know.
Oh, yeah. So a lot of triggers, but I hope a little different, and hopefully a different feeling when he arrived and got here.
Yeah, it was the morning, and there was sun shining through the window.
Yeah.
Unlike when Leia was born, it was 9:41 p.m. It was dark. It was quiet. I'll never forget, obviously how quiet it was afterwards. Like the baby's supposed to be screaming.
Not screaming.
And it was just tears, Yeah. And it was so different this time. Screaming baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That just is
Thank you.
Wonderful. I know we were kind of going back and forth of when we would actually get to interviewing you, and you're like, I'm about to have a baby, and I'm like, we can wait. So I'm glad that he has arrived safely, and he is healthy and good, and you are healthy and good.
Yeah, we had a scare around 8 days. I had to go to the hospital with him because we were worried about something that was going on with his breathing, and so they ended up testing him for COVID-19 amongst everything else.
Right.
It was crazy. Like every nurse and doctor who came into our rooms wearing full face shield and gown, because that's standard for if you're having any kind of respiratory symptoms now. But yeah, I mean, outside of that, he's good. We're healthy. It's just Mama and her depression and anxiety now. That I have to deal with.
Yeah. Actually, speaking about kind of some postpartum depression, do you think you had any of that after Leia?
For sure. I mean, I don't even know where you draw the line for postpartum depression and just plain grief.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as post-traumatic stress.
Yeah.
I think it was all three going on at once there after Leia was born. Gosh, like to describe that darkness to somebody. I mean, obviously, I know you get it. Only those of us who have been through it can get it. But to describe that to somebody who hasn't lost a baby, that darkness that I entered, it's a place I pray I never have to experience that again, because that's hell.
Yeah.
That's hell on earth, and that's something I would not wish. It sounds cliche. I wouldn't wish it on the worst person. The worst. I wouldn't wish it on them.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. It is a hard spot. Did you do anything to help you with that? Did you go to counseling? Did you take medications? There's a myriad of ways people try and handle it, and I'm just curious to know what you did or didn't do. Or
yeah, my husband and I both attended a grief group that started. It started 4 weeks after Leia was born. It was a 7-week course that we went to, where the head of the grief group was a counselor who 30 years ago lost his baby girl, his first child, to a cord accident.
Oh.
I know when we attended the grief group, when we first went, I knew that he was the father of a stillborn daughter. When I found out in the first session of the grief group that it was a baby girl, it was their first, and it was a cord accident. Oh my gosh. I was just a basket case at every single session of that grief group, but that was the worst. It was like looking into the future.
Yeah, you're like, this might be me.
Yeah,
some people along.
But at the same time, it was kind of nice to know that this man 30 years later is still honoring his daughter in that way. His daughter, Chelsea, I'll never forget her name now, his
That's
baby
great.
girl, who would be my age now, is still honoring her in that way, helping other parents. We went to that grief group, both me and my husband, and I had been going to counseling before I was pregnant. I've been in counseling for a long time, for different things.
Big fan of counseling. It's good.
Yeah. So I was used to it, and I already had a counselor who I had a relationship with, so that was perfect. And who I still talk to on a weekly basis. I didn't do any medications. I've definitely considered it a few times. What with getting pregnant again so quickly, I was just scared to add any factor. Obviously I know that it's been proven that many of them are very safe for pregnancy. I was just in a heightened state of paranoia, I think, with that pregnancy completely.
Yeah. You want to be conservative. I totally get it. Totally get it. So you've talked about her little, her urn, her heart-shaped urn, and the box that you have, but it sounds like you have a few other special objects and like little tokens and things that you have to remind you of Leia. Can you tell us about those?
Oh my gosh, I could list it. If I could just list all the different little things that I've kept, it's like I'm a hoarder. It's like I'm a hoarder for absolutely anything that has any kind of connection with her, or with, when I was in the hospital, or, labor, or anything like that. Obviously I've got her Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep pictures in a couple different, or 3 different rooms in the house. But I guess the biggest things would be, right after she was born, I started a garden in our backyard that was supposed to be very small. My husband grew up in construction and building and designing, and he decided, no, this is going to be a gigantic oasis with waterfall and ponds. So a lot of it had to be put on hold after all of the complications started with my pregnancy with Indiana. But it's a big garden out there, a butterfly garden that we have.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And gosh, all the little things that I've got around the house. Like he had started making a bay window for our room. This is him.
I was about to say, that's not some small construction project. That's a bay window. You're talking, like busting down a wall.
So he had made this bay window for our bedroom, for the master bedroom. And I, during my entire pregnancy with Leia, had thought, I'm going to sit at that bay window and I will breastfeed her and I will look outside at the yard and it will be so beautiful. Obviously that didn't happen. So all of the flowers that I got, from different people after she was born, all of the different cards, I set them on the bench part of the bay window, and they are all still there.
Oh.
The flowers, the bouquets are all dead and dry and horrible looking. And all of the cards are just still there, and I've never moved them. I don't know when I will. The plan was that, when I brought a living baby into our house and I could actually breastfeed a baby there like I had planned, I would move them. And I still haven't done it. I don't know when I will.
Yeah. Maybe that's her special spot right there. And yeah. It sounds like, so the garden's going to continue now. It sounds like that's going to, that's going to go crazy, I'm sure. And talking a little bit about, it sounds like a lot of people were very responsive and got you cards and flowers and that type of thing. Was there anything else that kind of stood out that somebody did for you guys after Leia passed away that
Yeah,
you want to bring
you
up?
know, I had a lot of support from a lot of different people. You know, my coworkers who are really my only friends to say. I've got a couple of friends, you know, who I've known since college, but other than that, my friends are my coworkers in my company, and they really stepped up. I had, you know, just a few different people who would say, "Do you want for me to come over and just talk?" And I said, "Yes, come over." And they would come over and they would bring booze and we would drink and I would just cry and get drunk. And, you know, this was obviously before I was pregnant again.
Yeah.
But in those first 2, 3, 4 weeks after she was born, you know, I just wanted to talk. I just wanted to talk and talk and talk about how she was born, just like how we just did in our previous segment. I wanted to just tell every single detail to anybody who would listen, um, and people stepped up. They did, even though it was hard for them. You know, a couple of people who came over and sat with me out on our screen and porch, and you know, we were drinking wine. They were just bawling and I wasn't. You know, they were the ones who were crying and I was just talking and talking and talking. You know,
But sometimes you just need to talk about them. So
yeah,
it totally is. Yeah.
so I think that was the biggest thing, gosh, was just the people who were willing to come over, because I was not in any way, shape, or form ready to even, like, gosh, like I remember even just like driving was hard. Like driving and going somewhere, like I can't do that. Like I don't even know how to do that anymore. Like everything just felt so new. So to have people willing to come to my house to talk in person and to give me a hug just meant so much. Especially, I mean, we live out in the boonies here. We live out in a really kind of a rural area, far out from everything. So the people who did come, they drove like, you know, 45 minutes to an hour to come in and see us and talk to us. So,
That is really kind. That is really,
yeah.
really kind. I love the fact that they just said, "You want to talk? Let's hear it." I mean, they just came and they were there, and that is really so important, I think. That's great.
Yeah, and they, you know, they were honest and said that they were scared about it sometimes. I had
Really?
a couple of people who said, you know, when you told me that you wanted for me to see her picture, I was scared.
Really?
But I'm so glad I did, and I'm just so glad that I got to, you know, talk about this with you, because I never, you know, there were so many things that they just never knew. You know, they came out of our conversation just kind of a little bit more aware of what stillbirth is. Of, you know, a lot of people didn't even really realize how developed a baby is at 32 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, people just don't really think about it.
Yeah.
They, you know, they think, okay, 9 months, the baby's a baby. Before that, you know, unless they've been pregnant, really, you know, a lot of them are just kind of thinking, okay, ball of cells or something.
Yeah. Like
You
not
know?
a ball of cells.
Yeah, they weren't, a lot of them just weren't aware of what she looked like.
Yeah.
You know, with that gestation. So
That's cool that you were able to kind of also teach them a little bit about
yeah.
how that goes down. So, and is there anything that you would recommend people not say in this case if you have somebody in your life that has a stillbirth and has experienced a stillbirth? Anything that you heard that you're like, maybe you shouldn't say that. That's not a good idea.
All those cliche things that everybody says. I know you know what they are. It happens for a reason.
Yeah, you're like,
You can try again. God has another angel. A bunch of BS like that.
yeah,
You know, stuff that's just not helpful.
no, it doesn't feel that great, actually.
Yeah. And I remember when the biggest thing in that was where that grief group was so beneficial, was that we were really able to learn how to place a label on those phrases, which was just not helpful. They're just not helpful.
Yeah.
Some things are helpful, other things are not helpful, and other things are just plain hurtful. And usually people aren't intending to hurt.
Mm-mm.
Every once in a while they do, but for the most part people are trying to help and they're just not succeeding.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. You're like, they have good intentions, but didn't quite work out. And so how is Basil holding up? How has he grieved through this time? I know that you guys got pregnant fairly quickly, a couple months after Leia was born. How has he coped with that until you guys were pregnant again? And was he also as paranoid as you were during this pregnancy, also the second pregnancy? I mean, I'm sure he's like, if he's anything like my husband, he may be just a nervous wreck.
I would say, he's a pretty calm and level-headed guy.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever there was any kind of concern, that is when he became more scared.
Mm.
As far as coping after Leia was born, that garden he was putting his all into that.
Yeah.
For us both, I would say that was our biggest coping mechanism, because we had a very large wooded area in our backyard that kind of needed to be cleared out in order to make way for this garden. We're blessed to have a pretty large backyard, and those very first couple of weeks, even though I had just had a baby, I would go out there with an axe
and just chop down trees.
Yes. I went out there with an axe. I played certain music that fit my mood, dark, sad music, and I went out there with an axe and I just started hacking away. And I would do this for hours every single day. And Basil put a lot of his grief into it, in that he was the one who ended up bringing in like a professional person to actually clear it out and bring in truckloads of dirt to level the ground, and putting up the fence, like a white picket fence that goes all around there. He just went all out, and it was that was definitely his biggest coping mechanism. Going to the grief group, I think he did for me, to support me. I don't think it was something that he really enjoyed doing as much as I did. He was primarily there for me. But, raising the funds for the cuddle cot, doing the butterfly garden out in our backyard, those were the things that were his biggest ways of coping.
Yeah, it seems like kind of creating something in honor of Leia. That's probably the way he expresses his love, I'm sure. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, we sorry, is it all right if I mention one other thing about
totally
the garden?
Okay. Yeah, completely.
Something that we kind of designed together was a swing that we put out there. On the day that I drove to the hospital, wondering what was going on, knowing she wasn't moving, not sure what that meant, I played on my car radio really loudly A Whole New World from the new movie Aladdin, the new version.
Yeah.
Because she always seemed to move a lot during that song. We had gone to go see the movie, and she would move a lot during the movie.
Really?
And then I played the song in the car, and she would move a lot. And so on the way to the hospital, I played that song, and she didn't move. After she was born, and after we got home, and when we were working on this garden, I made a swing that looked like the magic carpet.
No way.
Yeah, and he helped me make that. And so it turned out really cool. Like, it looks just like the magic carpet, and the rope that holds it to the tree is yellow. There's like the yellow cords that come off of the magic carpet and from Aladdin.
Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, and I remember when it was done, and we were both swinging on it, and that was the first time we were both really smiling. for the first time after she had died, we were both smiling and enjoying doing something together, with swinging on that swing.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. I might have to ask you for a picture of that, because I'm like so
Absolutely.
Curious to see
I'm very proud of it. I'm like immensely proud of it.
I think that's so cool. And it sounds like you guys have gotten closer because of this tragedy like this can drive people apart, a couple apart. It sounds like you guys have gotten very close. And obviously Indy is helping that too, I'm sure, but I think that's great.
Yeah, I never knew how much I loved him, I think, until I was pushing, when Leia was born, and I was pushing, and I told him it's almost over. I don't think I've ever felt more love for him than I did in those moments.
Wow. Well, good. You guys are going to be coming up on her first birthday here in the next month. Do you guys have any plans to celebrate or remember her by?
It's really hard. I've been feeling really dark as that first as this first birthday comes up. I've been trying to plan some things. I want to have my mom and my sister over. My dad is in Connecticut. He's not going to be able to come down because they're still very quarantined up there.
Mm-hmm.
He had originally planned on being down here in June. He still hasn't seen Indiana.
Oh.
Yeah. And, we don't know when he'll be able to come down and meet him. But, we've talked about eating a lunch that for her baby shower, we had planned on having a couple different types of meals from a couple of restaurants that we like in the area, like Bao. I'm sure you know what Bao is.
Yeah.
And like tacos from a local taco place.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
Yeah. So we're going to probably do that. Her colors are lavender and yellow. So we're going to have some kind of like lemon cake or something. We had like kind of a celebration on August 1st, which was her due date. We had lemon cupcakes. So we're going to have some kind of lemon cake.
Great.
Yeah. It's hard to even think about planning all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I don't want to, and I do want to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so hard to find that balance because there's some years, like our first, I guess we've only had one birthday since our son has passed away, but we were like, let's not plan too many things because it might just the day might ambush us and we might be a heap of, tears that day. And so, yeah, we kind of didn't have too many expectations, but it turned out really lovely because of that, I think.
One thing that I do want to do, which I have reached out to her, is the photographer who took our Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep photos. I reached out to her and I would like to have another family photo taken, as long as she's able to, now that things are kind of opening up a little bit due to the virus. Hopefully on June 6th, on Leia's birthday, we can have her come out and take some family photos of us, including Indiana.
Oh.
I think that would be kind of nice because she's the first person who took a family picture of us.
Yeah.
She did our family photos when Leia was born, so I'd like her to do that again.
That is great. I'm glad that you kept in touch with her. Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I still had her email address from way back when, and I emailed her and said, hey, I've had another baby. And she emailed me back and said that she would, be happy to do it. And then she told me that her first daughter was also born on June 6th.
Oh.
I was like, wow.
Wow,
That's neat. Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, that's kind of cool that she was there for you on her daughter's birthday. So, and I'm actually a little curious, how was Mother's Day this last, couple weeks ago?
The day before Mother's Day was the hardest.
Oh.
I woke up crying on the day before Mother's Day. I think it's just all of the anticipation. Mm-hmm. The day of wasn't that bad. I may have a little bit going for me here in that I'm just really sleep deprived still. Yeah. So I wasn't really capable of feeling that much on the day of. We just kind of vegged out and watched Netflix. Oh, we got like a takeout brunch from our favorite restaurant that was doing special Mother's Day takeout meals.
Nice.
We did that. And I took a couple of naps because I was tired.
Yeah.
And that was it. that was all we did.
That is a great Mother's Day gift to you. That's awesome. Well, is there any last piece of advice that you'd like to give to any other lost parents that may be listening to this?
I think the biggest thing is to just feel. Don't avoid those feelings. Try and punch the wall if you have to, and take an axe to a tree outside if you need to. Have no shame about any of the feelings that you have, because what you have just gone through is, I would say, one one of just 2 or 3 of the most horrific things a woman can possibly go through is to give birth to your dead child. And it's not something that you're going to be able to just brush under the rug, because if you do, it's just going to come back and bite you in the butt. Your baby does matter. Keep saying their name as much as you possibly can, and just always love them. I don't know. Obviously, you're always going to love them, but never be afraid to show that love, I guess, is what I mean to say. Just don't be afraid to, be vocal about that love that you still have for your baby, to your family, to your friends. It's perfectly okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a perfect way to end. I love that. Be vocal about your love for them. I think that's so wonderful. Lili, thank you so much. This was so enlightening, and I just am so privileged to know you. And to know a little bit about your daughter too. I think that was pretty cool what you guys have done. And Indy is, he's gonna have he has good parents. He's gonna be so lucky.
I am blessed, and I am looking so forward to being able to tell him about the little girl who changed our lives. Can't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
What a great interview. We are so grateful to Lili to chat specifically about Leia and also her pregnancy after loss. I hope that was helpful for others out there today. So thank you so much again, Lili. Head on over to our website, stillapartofus.com, where you can find the show notes, including a full transcript of this interview and any resources that were mentioned, where you can sign up for our short and helpful email newsletter, where you can learn how you can become a patron and support the work it takes to produce a show for just a few dollars a month, and lastly, where you can find out how to get in touch with us if you want to share your child's story on the show. If you'd like, you can just reach out to us with our email, stillapartofus@gmail.com, and we will respond there. The show was produced and edited by Winter and Lee Red. Thanks to Josh Woodward for letting us use his song, Vanishing Note. You can find him at joshwoodward.com. Lastly, subscribe to this podcast and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Chip and Dale of the Rescue Rangers are just animated versions of Magnum P.I. and Indiana Jones.